Welcome. Warm welcome to everyone, all the folks who are here in person, all the folks who are online, and the dogs who are online, and the cats who are online, and everybody. Hello, Carolyn. This is the Sunday Sounds of Dhamma program, and that means we're going to do about 10 or 15 minutes of guided meditation. And I'll give about a 30-minute or so Dharma reflection. And then we'll have a little bit of time for questions, comments, reflections, and then the dedication of merit at the end. And before I get started with that part, I just want to mention that we have a whole lot of community activities going on in the month of May, which is not unusual. May is the time of year when we have Vesak. Vesak is the celebration of the Buddha's birthday, enlightenment, and passing away into nirvana. And so we're going to have a big picnic on May 10th. And we're just before the picnic, actually, there'll be a guided tour of the National Museum of Asian Art, where they have some beautiful depictions of the Buddha's life, different points in the Buddha's life. Hola, Luis Miguel. Puedes elegir la interpretación en el menú si no lo has hecho todavía. And what else is happening? So that's next week. And then we also have a day-long retreat in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And that'll be good. I've been over there last few years. And registration for the class is still open, which is kicking off with a retreat on May 31st. And of course, movie night, because who wouldn't want to miss movie night? Movie night is happening. We're watching a very interesting movie called Karmatic, which is about somebody trying to steal somebody else's karma using artificial intelligence. A very interesting movie. Very interesting movie. And that is 22nd. I believe that's a Thursday. Hold on one second. This is asking me about language, so that here we go. Yeah. And yeah, and a whole number of other things. So please do check the calendar. We try to keep it updated with lots of activities that are also available virtually. So with that, today I thought that we would return to this meditation that I've been exploring with you off and on cessation, observing cessation. So as usual, though, we want to start with the body, getting the body settled, allowing the body some movement, perhaps, releasing tension. Allowing the body to find a balanced and upright posture. Releasing the belly. And sensing the weight of the body on your seat. The natural stability of the body, even amidst those small movements. Perhaps the sensations of the breath breathing the body have come into awareness. And it's okay to just allow the breath to have its own rhythms. And now turning the attention to become aware of endings. The end of a sound, the end of a breath, the end of a thought. Just a nod to each ending that you perceive. Aware of sounds, aware of thoughts, and just noticing those moments of cessation. Okay, that brings us to the end of the meditation. And if you have any questions or reflections on that, we'll take them at the end. Jet, could you turn on that white air filter that is right there between the two tables? The on button is the one all the way to the left. There you go. Thank you. All right, so we're going to, folks who want to can chant the homage to the Buddha and the triple gem. So I'm going to bring that up on screen. Okay. All right, hopefully everybody can see that. There are some paper copies over there, but I think everybody in the room can see also the screen. Yeah. So you're welcome to chant along if you would like. This is remembering the Buddha as an awakened being, a fully awakened being, and also honoring the Dhamma, the teachings, and the reality that those teachings point to, and the Sangha, the community. And this is in the ancient language of Pali, so if that's unfamiliar, it's really lovely to also just let it wash over you. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. One of the most important perceptions that we can develop if we want to understand the nature of our lives is a perception of impermanence. And whenever I talk about impermanence, I always think, yeah, that sounds so obvious, right? Things change. Things change. Things come to an end. We just sat and watched that. And yet, somehow, it hasn't really changed your perception fully just yet. And I would propose that that has a lot to do with the way that we relate to thought. Thought One way to think about thought is as a activity in consciousness, this kind of sensation or stimulation that happens within the knowing mind. Excuse me. And typically, thought seems to be capturing a true picture of reality. And we want to use it to understand the world. But that is really a concept. That is really kind of a heuristic or a bubble that we put around the reality of existence. In fact, the Buddha referred to the feeling tones that arise, the sort of knowing the pleasantness or unpleasantness of things as being just like a bubble, a phenomena that pops in an instant, that doesn't have any solidity to it. In fact, while I was on retreats, I was away offering some metta retreats in Latin America for the last few weeks. And I was at breakfast. We were eating breakfast in silence, deliciously. And I was thinking about this nature of perception, which comes along with those feeling tones about our lives. And perception is about words. It's about how we label the world and we say, this is the color green, or this is a dog, or this is quantum physics. But the true experience of reality is wordless, is silent, because words don't reach it. Words don't capture that. Those labels, those perceptions, they don't quite do it justice. And that's why a profound experience of the present moment is always silent. The inner silence. There may be sound happening, but it is an experience of inner silence, which is always present, always available, not necessarily always accessible. And so this way that we have of doing this conceptual smoothing all the time and this labeling of stuff, and we put a little word on it in whatever language you happen to be speaking, is in a way a relationship to the past, because all language is about memory. Unless you made up the word on the spot, all language is about memory. So not only is it a conceptual bubble, but it's a conceptual bubble about what happened before, relating what's happening now to what happened before. That's language. The present moment experience is free of all that. potentially. And it's this relationship of language and the way that it brings us from into the past, and the way that it creates this bubble around, or this kind of smoothing around experience that can make it difficult to observe impermanence in its true depth. So I'll tell you a little story, an example of this from a number of years back. Pardon me. And so while I was training in Japan, I have lots of good stories about training in Japan, some of them very funny. And this one's kind of funny too, actually. So this would have been end of 06 or early part of 07, 2007. And I was in the garden. So I was living at a monastery in Obama, Japan, this very rural fishing village, about an hour and 15 minutes or so train ride northwest of Kyoto. And we were in the garden, and a lot of our food actually came from the garden. The garden was about the size of this room, maybe a little bit bigger, and we've provided about 60% of the food for 22 people in a space that size, because they were good at it. Those monks are very good at growing food. So anyway, it was time to collect some chamomile. I hope I have the time of year right. Yeah. Anyway, it was time to collect some chamomile for tea for the Roshi, for the teacher there, my dear root teacher and Zen master, Sekihara Roshi. And so the German monk who was the head of the garden at that time, Shodo said to me, okay, you sit down right here in front of this plant and just pick chamomile flowers, because we're going to need a lot of them to make tea for Roshi. All right. So I sit down on my tiny chair. And I'm in front of this German chamomile bush. And what does a German chamomile bush looks like? It's like these extremely fine, like more than toothpaste, thinner than toothpick fine stems, and going in 1,000 different directions, and maybe 100 or 200 tiny, tiny little white flowers with yellow centers. There's a chamomile bush. Maybe Joso can relate to this, what they look like there. And anyway, so here I am sitting in front of this bush, and I start to pick some flowers, and then I think to myself, oh, but now wait a minute. I don't know exactly which flowers to pick here. Am I also supposed to be picking the buds? And is it okay to pick the ones where the starting to get a little brown in the edge? Or, you know, what about when the petals are already starting to fall off? Like, which ones are okay? And, in the monastery, there are very specific rules around food. Like when they put you in the kitchen and they say, chop this carrot into the form of a matchstick, they actually put a matchstick in front of you, right? So I thought, well, I better check in with Shodo and ask him about this. Which flowers am I supposed to be picking? So Shodo's standing over there on the other side of this relatively small space, and I call out, Shodo-san, I don't know which flowers I'm supposed to be picking here. What is it, the buds or just the flowers or only the ones with petals? I'm not sure. And Shodo looks up from his digging, whatever he's doing over there with his shovel, and he gives me this terrible scowl, and he says, are you asking me when a flower becomes a flower? So there's a long pause there. Long pause. And I said, well, maybe. Because I still don't know which flowers I'm supposed to pick. And Shoda-san just looked at me and shook his head with an even bigger frown, just like, not answering that question. Not answering that question. It is a brilliant answer, right? Because at what moment does the flower become a flower? Do we really know? Do we really even need to know in order to make chamomile tea? Right? If I had some idea that only buds or only flowers with a certain number of petals, would that make it more real somehow, more accurate somehow? No, no, no. The important part was just to be present with the flowers and to just choose according to what I would want to drink. Right? Be there with the flowers as they were. Not as some category of stuff, but as an actual embodied experience of flower. And then we make tea. And we know that flower is just a word for a process. It's just a word for this beautiful unfolding of life. And we don't confuse our word with the thing itself. Mm. There's this beautiful quote on the refrigerator here, which is a card that was made by a very good friend who does this beautiful art. And the quote is not impermanence the very fragrance of our lives? That's Rainer Maria Rilke, a German poet. Is not impermanence the very fragrance of our lives? Indeed, it is. It is. And we can't think our way into an embodied, wise, profound experience of impermanence. There's this lovely book I wanted to quote from. Let's see if I'm at the right point of sharing something from Ayakema. So Ayakema is also German. Wow, the Germans take the day today. It's kind of interesting. it's all weaving together unintentionally. She says this: everyone has experiences constantly. So Ayakema was one of the pioneers of the revival of the bhikkhuni ordination in the early Buddhist traditions. And she did quite a lot of teaching around jhanas and concentration states, particularly, which is part of the reason why she has something to say about impermanence. So here she says, let me just continue with this. Everyone has experiences constantly. If we understood them correctly, we would already be enlightened. We all, for instance, experience the impermanence of each breath. And yet, many of us continue to entertain myriad ideas about our future. We have not understood the experience that there is only this moment. Mm? So, did you really experience the impermanence of your breath when you watched the cessation? Were you able to really take that in? Did you notice some kind of reaction or some kind of wanting to move along to the next thing, or distraction, or thoughts about the future, or thoughts about the past? Right, right. And even thoughts about the future and thoughts about the past are impermanent. Right? If we really attend to the nature of experience, that meditation on cessation would be like this, right? Like that. Next, 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 next. Even much faster than that, actually. And you can experience that in meditation. You can try it sometimes. Feels like shuffling a deck of cards. Mind moments, all different from the next. Each one different from the next. And the Buddha said in the discourse on Valama, that I like to mention a lot, that all it takes is a finger snap's worth of profound experience of the perception of impermanence to change your life. More powerful than 84,000 bowls worth of gold bowls worth of silver being donated to a Buddha. More powerful than taking the precepts, more powerful than building a building for a Sangha headed up by a Buddha, is a finger snap's worth of true dropping into the reality that everything is ceasing. Mm. So you might ask yourself, what is one of the ways, how can you start to approach this? How can you start to develop this sense of the depth of perception that's needed to really receive impermanence in a way that will fundamentally change your understanding of life? Mhm. And I would suggest, as I just alluded to a moment ago, that concentration has something to do with it. So what is that? What do we mean by concentration? In early Buddhism, we mean a form of training the mind to attend to one type of phenomena for a while, to persist with one particular kind of phenomena and allow all the other thoughts and sensations and other things to sort of slide off so that the mind can focus on one thing, just one thing. Now, what's really happening there is over and over and over again, right? What mind moments of one thing, one phenomena that you're observing, like the breath, or like the quality of loving kindness, or like the phenomena of earth. Those are some of the more commonly used traditional objects for concentration. And so it's kind of ironic, right? It's like Oh, right. What you need to do in order to see impermanence is you need to have your mind be more steady. You need to have the mind be steady enough that it can observe, it can allow for the dropping away of all sorts of things, including, guess what? Thoughts and words and all those nice conceptual things. And then it becomes abundantly clear that those things do not define the world. So then the mind can investigate, well, what does define the world? So I highly recommend some good concentration practice, some practice of really learning how to, together with joy, it actually requires joy, according to the Buddha. Concentration requires some joy, but together with joy, developing, training the mind, it takes time. Sorry, folks, patience is a virtue. Training the mind to be willing to stay, 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 stay. Stay long enough to start to see those gaps, even in consciousness. Ooh, that'll blow your mind. But even just in the day-to-day, I would say, see how deeply you can take in the actual physical reality of impermanence in your world. Let the flower be a process. That's moment by moment by moment process. Or, speaking of other poets, as one of my favorite poets, Ryokan, said, go as deeply as you can into life, and you will be able to let go even of blossoms. So, go deeply into life, my friends. Okay, so that was my perfectly unprepared talk for today. And I'm going to take another sip of water, and then we'll have time for comments, questions, reflections. Coming back to the pollen in DC, I have to say, goodness gracious, I'm enjoying it. Even if my body's not sure what to do with all that. Okay. So we have a mic for folks who are in the room to ask a question so everybody online can hear it, or folks online can also raise their hands, their physical hands or their Zoom hands. Yes, Jet. Here we go. I'm going to give him the mic.
Yeah, really great talk. And one part that really stood out to me was when you were talking about perceptions and thoughts. And in some of my readings, I'm having a bit of a difficult time really differentiating mental formations from perceptions.
Mm.
My understanding right now is a perception is something that's here in the moment that you're describing, and the mental formation can kind of be maybe imagery or maybe a memory of the past or future. So that can involve senses like vision that isn't in front of you, but you're imagining. So I'm not sure if I'm completely off the mark, but yeah, it's for a while I've been trying to really differentiate the two.
Okay, great. So that's a good question, and Jets is talking about this framework that we call the five aggregates, the five khandas in Pali or skandhas in Sanskrit. And because I mentioned a few of them on the way through this talk. And yes, so the way to think about so perceptions is this labeling or this kind of identifying function. So something happens. If somebody could give me the light ball in the back, I would love to use my one and only, and therefore my favorite prop. I know. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So the way to think, one way to think about the five aggregates is if this is your ear, this ball, then there's the ear organ, right? There's a sound that reaches the ear, and there is a state of consciousness that is able to attend to that. So you have to be, let's say, for the sake of discussion, awake, or if you're asleep, not so asleep that you don't hear it, or not in jhana, for example, where you would be cut off from sound. So the sound hits the ear, and there's a moment of ear consciousness that has a distinct beginning, middle, and end. And that also sparks simultaneously this feeling tone. And we decide instantly, without any words, is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Neutral meaning like I can't tell, something in between. It doesn't have a feeling to a valence to it, so to speak. And everything across the entire possible scale of experience is included across those three things. But then, based on that, right, based on that feeling tone and whatever the type of contact was, we perceive. And you might think airplane, right? The sound, you're meditating, you hear the sound of the airplane. But then the sankhara is a response or a reaction on top of that perception, right? So, damn it, why do I have to live in a, airplane zone? Or am I late for my flight? Or, right? Or some memory of a plane from before, or visualizing the plane, just as you were saying, right? You could imagine. But part of what I'm saying is that even the perception is, in some sense, tinged by a memory of the past once you put plane on it, right? Or avión, if you're speaking Spanish, or I don't know the word in French right off the top of my head. Thank you. Deborah does. So life completely free of sankharas is possible. And that we can pretty easily see, I think, in terms of, you can sort of start to see when the mind slows down this kind of judgment sometimes in meditation, and you're just kind of hearing things, seeing things, but you still have the words that go with them, right? But there's not this kind of added thing about, I hate tacos, right? But then there's also, and this is one of the deeper concentration states, right? This ability to drop off the labeling altogether and just have the perceived experience of the contact in whatever pleasant, unpleasant, neutral form it is. Yeah. Hopefully that helps in some way.
Actually, does a lot.
Great. Yeah. And part of the reason why I go there often is because the Buddha specifically also said, without understanding the five aggregates fully and letting them go, being aware of their ultimate impermanence, you cannot wake up. You cannot wake up. He stated categorically in several of the discourses in what's called the Samyutta Nikaya, the collected discourses. There's a whole chapter of 250 some discourses on the aggregates specifically. And then the following chapter is on mind, is on chitta. So that's also, those two kind of go together, that group of discourse, those two groups of discourses. Yes, here we go. Please say your name for everyone.
Okay.
And the little round part is the part that goes close to your mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi, I'm Evan. First time here, and I think you may have answered this question in multiple ways. But thank you for humoring me.
Sure.
Um,
Welcome, Evan.
um, how do you how do you go about sort of dislodging experience with impermanence and the pain that comes from that experience with finding joy in the actual impermanence of the moment? It
Mm,
you said joy was an essential component,
mhm,
but I feel like impermanence causes a lot of pain, and
mm,
people
mm,
are trying to reconcile that pain.
mhm.
How do you go to that place in a way that's joyful? I
Yes.
hope that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. And that leads to the reason, one of the main reasons for those concentration practices, because the Buddha in his process of awakening, and I think, many, many folks can experience this themselves, is you can become skillful at actually developing joy in the meditation such that your joy isn't dependent on what's happening externally or even or what you're observing at all. It's just a kind of joy that I believe, at least in my own experience, I could say, in large part, it is the relief that the mind feels when it is only given one thing to take care of. Then naturally, there's this kind of very physical, actually, and mental joy that just gets unleashed. Like, whew, this is great. And so it doesn't relate to what you're seeing in the impermanence. I would agree that impermanence is definitely a source of suffering. It is hard to lose people we love, to lose things that we want to hold on to not get things that we're hoping to get, and so on. Um, and I think that it's a very, very important part of our practice is honesty with that pain, also with that suffering, right? Honesty with all of our experience, but certainly honesty with the times that things are difficult. Um, and that said, the promise of the path is something like finding your peace with that fact, finding your peace with the fact that, yes, all things are going, whether in death or in life. And you could be okay with that. You could discover your intrinsic harmony with that. Something like that. Okay. Yes, Brad.
Just thinking of a quote from Robert Aiken Roshi. um, that it's not about clarifying the mystery, it's about making the mystery clear.
Mhm.
And when that grief of impermanence, if we can go through that grief of impermanence, then we're starting to drop more into the mystery and not knowing and being okay with that.
Mm.
Uh, we get rid of the delusions of how much we think we can control, you know, and
Mm.
that's exhausting.
Mm.
We're trying to rebuild the past and construct a future before it's even here. That's a lot of work. And it's such a relief just to drop that.
Mm. Mm.
And we don't know what's coming next. And that's okay, you know.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but it doesn't come quickly. It doesn't come easily. That's why it's called a practice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Brad. Thank you. And hearing that reflection, I also think that's why we practice in Sangha, right? That's why we
Yeah.
practice in community, so that we have good friends around to support us, when we're feeling the pain of impermanence, or when we're blissed out of our gourds with our joy, or whatever else is happening, all shades in between. Yeah, beautiful. Yes, Deborah.
Thank you also for that really lovely talk. And so that it was completely unprepared is just, wow. My question is relates to another teacher that I've studied with who has a terminal form of brain cancer that has been going on for quite a while, and he's still going. Anyway, he's amazingly still going. And I was in a meeting with him, and we had a lot of laughing in that. And he said that one of his mantras is no hope, no dread. No hope, no dread. And it's something I've been wanting to ask you for a long time about hope. And now we have 3 minutes, so maybe not. But that's my question. And what's the Buddhist position on hope? Sorry.
The Buddhist position. I mean, so first of all, there's not one Buddhist position on anything. Let me start with that. Goodness gracious. At least not in my experience, get 10 Buddhists in a room and get 10 answers. I mean, I think Buddhism is a profoundly hopeful path. It is a path that says that human beings can know truth, like down to the marrow of their bones, know truth, and be free of pain around that. That's a pretty hopeful story as far as I'm concerned. The issue is that hope becomes a story that I want to have happen, right? Just like awakening is a story that I'm making happen because I practice and I do this and I do that. But that's not actually the case. That's a mistake, right? And we can't even really know what it is until we have arrived at that moment, right? We've read the books. We might hear different people talk about it. We might have a taste of this or that. So I think that as long as hope doesn't become a clinging or a sort of aiming for a defined outcome, then it won't bring suffering. But any hope that is aiming for a defined outcome is, by definition, it doesn't work that way, right? Right. If we're honest with ourselves, the world never delivers exactly what we're looking for. And, I think also that's beautiful that he's going through that, and that is, of course, related to his awareness of death at this moment in time, right? Michael Wenger, one of the teachers at San Francisco Zen Center, used to talk about one of the beat poets, and I'm sorry to say I don't know which one, who, when he was dying, he used to say, help is not on the way. That was his mantra at the end of his life. Help is not on the way. I just need to be with this and not think that there's some way to change it. Because maybe there is, but that's not going to help me in this moment. So, thank you. All right, we are at the end of our time, and I don't know if we would like to make an announcement, or you could just pass on the announcement for today. You can make a short and sweet announcement.
Sure.
Okay, Dana.
Giving and receiving.
Don't cover, the little round thing is the mic.
It's
That's
written
where the
round
actual
thing,
mic
okay.
is.
Giving and receiving has been a part of Buddhism since its inception. Dassanaya Buddhist Community is sustained by donation that can happen in many forms, financial, materials that are needed, and volunteering your time and your skills. And it's easy to find how to do that online. Everything is digital. Yeah, we have shopping carts. It's very, very nice to be here with all of you. And thank you for the talk.
Okay. Thanks, Dana. Wonderful. So, yes, much appreciation for our practice together and all the things that make it possible for us to be a community. And may the merits of this time together be a cause, be a condition for the awakening of all beings, known and unknown, seen and unseen, all beings in all realms, that all beings might be free from mental and physical suffering. By the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and each one's efforts, may all beings be liberated. Thanks, everyone. So good to see you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias. Gracias, Amparo.
Thank
Gracias,
you. Thank
Claudia.
you.
Gracias, Claudia.